All right, good morning, everyone. It's about 3 minutes to the top of the hour, and I'm getting started a little bit earlier as people hop on, just because there's a lot to talk about. And because this is the first call in the Chamber EDU Business 101 series, I think it warrants a little bit more pomp and circumstance than a normal call might. So I just want to first thank everyone who is on the call today for joining us, for taking a little bit of time out of your day, maybe, eating your lunch while you're consuming this content as well. However you're doing it, wherever you're doing it, we're just glad that you're here joining us. So again, my name is Kristine Brown. I'm the Director of Member Engagement here at the Chamber. And my two primary focuses here at the Chamber are partners and programs. And so, of course, Chamber EDU is one of our newer programs that was created amid the pandemic in order to connect our members, business leaders, employees, folks in nonprofit organizations to vital and timely and relevant information that will benefit them as they navigate the pandemic and also as we reemerge from it. So Chamber EDU Business 101, the spirit of that, of this series is, after a year of having to reimagine our world, reimagine how we work, reimagine where we work, to get back to some basics and to revisit some principles that we know are always going to be true of a good business citizen and a good business organization. So in that spirit, we've collaborated heavily with the UNR College of Business and Jim McClenahan, who is here on the call today and who will be our featured speaker, in order to bring you some content that you may not be privy to otherwise. And we thank our partners, all of our partners, for their support as we relaunch Chamber EDU and this particular Business 101 series. You can see some of those folks on the screen. We really appreciate the fact that they have taken an interest in Chamber EDU and taken an interest in investing in our members and in the community by providing resources and information that they need. They've completely underwritten this program, and we couldn't be more grateful for that. Really quickly, some upcoming webinars you can see on your screen as well. This is not a full list, obviously. We've got between 12 and 15 webinars throughout the entire month that you can take advantage of. Of course, they're all free, thanks to the generosity of our partners. And we've got, of course, another series with Jim McClenahan as well, Strategic Planning, which is a 3-part series over 3 weeks that we'll get to enjoy as the month advances. And also an interesting session on personal leadership that will be about an hour long, that will dig in a little deeper with you as an individual and your own personal leadership style and what guides you and what drives you, which is, of course, especially relevant in times like this after having reimagined everything we are and everything we're doing for a year, reacquainting yourself with who you are as a leader. I think that could be really vital. We just added 2 webinars on marketing that I encourage you to check out. And that is something, marketing is something that we've heard time and again from our members that they want guidance with. And so we're very pleased to have KPS3 facilitate those 2 webinars that are coming up. So please go to our website to sign up for future webinars. And we look forward to seeing many of you again and again and again this month. And of course, just a reminder, if you miss one of these webinars or want to rewatch one with your team, they're always available on demand on YouTube. So just go ahead and search for us for our Reno+Sparks Chamber of Commerce channel on YouTube, and you will be all set to go. So again, I knew that I would have a lot to talk about at the top of the call, and it's already 11:01. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share, and I'm going to invite Jim McClenahan to introduce himself and take it away. Looks like you're muted, sir.
It's not a Zoom meeting until someone is muted while trying to talk.
So true. That is one of the hallmarks of this time.
At a later time, my dog will come in and want to see you all on the screen. So just get ready for that.
Fantastic. We invite all of our 4-legged friends to join us on the call at any time.
Well, Kristine, I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk to this audience. As Kristine said, I'm the Director of Corporate Outreach for the College of Business at the University of Nevada, Reno. It's a very vague title because I wear lots of different hats at the college. It's safe to say that my primary role is to help students find success. And that success is typically found in a career And those careers are typically found with folks like you, employers who are trying to figure out, how do we bring in new talent? How do we develop new talent for whatever industry we're in? And so the college has lots of initiatives in real estate and sports management, gaming, insurance and risk management that we're bringing online so that we're training students to be part of that pipeline of talent. But one of the challenges of that is we all have to figure out, okay, how do we work with these students once they graduate? And what's amazing is that I saw a couple of my former students are on this call. So my apologies in advance for my performance here. It's an honor to be here at the Chamber. I served on the Chamber board for, it was about 10 years. I was a board chair for the Chamber. I saw Mike Hicks also on the call. Mike served as the treasurer for the Chamber for, I think, 5 years, a really, really long time. So I'm always grateful to Mike for his service to the Chamber. I heard Mike somewhere.
Looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. So after the Chamber board, I joined the board of United Federal Credit Union, which is a credit union that has 8 branches in town. They're a $3 billion organization, so it's a
Jim, my apologies for interrupting, but it sounds like your audio has taken on a strange garble, a little bit of interference.
Okay, is that any better?
It sounds like it's still ongoing. Not sure if anyone else is experiencing that issue. Is that happening for anyone else?
Yes, it's happening.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, how about if I exit and come back? Is that better?
You're good. Yes, all back to normal.
All right. Holler again if that happens, because
I know we're experiencing all of our favorite Zoom tropes today.
this is fantastic. I mean,
Great. Well, please carry on. Thank you.
who would want anything more? So I was talking about United Federal Credit Union. I'm the board chair for them. So what you're going to hear today is kind of a summary of my experience, both in the college, working with new professionals, and working on boards like the Chamber Board, United Federal Credit Union, and kind of some best practices that have come from there. And you'll hear that both in this session and the sessions that I'll do in strategic planning. Actually, the first planning session next week is going to be led by Dean Mosier of the College of Business. So you'll get to hear the Dean's perspective on mission. So feel free to ask questions anytime. I'll hope that my audio holds up and my internet doesn't get wonky as we go through this. So, we start with famous quotes from management that you guys have all heard. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. That's from one of the strategy gurus, Michael Porter. It's a great tee up to talk about strategic planning a little bit later. Begin with the end in mind. That's from Stephen Covey, who wrote 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. Seek first to understand, then to be understood, also from Stephen Covey. Encourage the heart. It's from Barry Posner and Jim Kouzes, who wrote a great book called Leadership Challenge, which I highly recommend. And I'm going to kind of integrate all these thoughts into what we're really talking about with management, and that's how you coach and develop talent. And all of this actually will lead into it. It's all going to focus around the average cost to acquire a new employee for a small business, which is $7,645, according to the National Association of Colleges and Employers, who helps us with all of our career services efforts. And so, of course, what we're trying to do is avoid those costs. And let's talk about how we do that. So what does this mean to us? It means it's much cheaper for us to invest in people than to find new people. The cost of turnover is really high. Do we have an audio problem again, Kristine?
Yes. Let's see. Do you mind trying to mute and unmute really quickly and see if that fixes it? If not, I think we'll just push through.
Is that better?
It is indeed.
Okay. All right. So something else this means to us, it's likely that we're going to have to change the culture of where we work, or at least how we work, if we want an environment where we can grow people, which is really what we're trying to do. Growing people is going to take a different effort than we would normally take when we are working in our normal business. We actually have to integrate that into what we do every day, how we work with customers, how we work with suppliers. So we have to find time somewhere. So let's start at the beginning. What's the goal of interviewing? And, for lack of Q&As, hopefully that the audio continues to hold up. I'll give you my perspective of what employers tell me. First, do they have the skills to do the job? That's what I'm trying to find out when I'm interviewing someone. Can they do the job? Do they have the experience? Do they have the knowledge? Do they fit our culture? So if we take someone and we bring them in, are they going to be a fit with all the other people that work here and the culture that we've tried to establish? And really this third one is sort of an undertone that we are always worried about in the back of our minds as employers. It's, are they going to leave the moment they find another position with a slightly higher salary? So we're trying to measure, how long are we going to hold on to these folks? If we're going to invest our time and our energy into training them and developing them, how long are they going to stay? So what we have to figure out, again, this is all before we start coaching them, is what do they really want? And if you ask these new young professionals what they really want, salary does not crack the top 4. They're not looking for the highest salary. It's important, you'll find it on their list, but it's typically not, it's just not as high as other things. Opportunity and mentorship or coaching are the two things that you will hear from almost every newly minted college grad that they're looking for. So as you're trying to build a culture, as you're trying to think about coaching, knowing that people are looking for opportunity and mentorship will hopefully really help you shape how you're going to go about onboarding new people and developing the people that you have. So I wanted to give you some techniques to do that. And I wanted to talk about mentoring, and this slide is terrible because it has way too much text on it. But mentoring and coaching are two characteristics of high-performing cultures. They're two characteristics of companies that retain people longer than average. And they're characteristics of places that new students, new grads, want to go work. So when we talk about mentoring, we're talking about a collaboration, usually between an experienced person and a newer person. And it's focused on growth and learning. Usually there's some aspect of organizational goals and culture, but it's really about professional development. A mentor is not usually someone's direct supervisor. In fact, it might not even be someone in their department. It's usually someone else, because sometimes you can have conversations with someone that's not writing your review, or that you're not reporting directly to, that it might be harder to have those conversations with that person. Mentoring is shown, for at least in our experience in the College of Business, it helps us retain students. It helps them be happier about their degree. And for small businesses, it can help you retain the people that are coming to work for you. most people are not going to spend 35 or 40 years with the same organization, but they'll spend longer in your organization if you invest some time into helping them understand what their long-term personal and professional goals are. So some organizations shy away from mentoring because they're worried that they might uncover a goal that this person might want to do that might lead them away from this organization. But ultimately, we have a responsibility to help people find their purpose, to find happiness. And if I would rather have someone leave than be unhappy and be a subpar performer. So that's mentorship. And what we're trying to do, we're really trying to grow people like these trees. And for those of you who I know a little bit, my family has been working on trees for 110 years. So I know what I'm talking about. When you want to grow a really big tree, you're trying to figure out what's the right amount of fertilizer. What's the right amount of water? How do we prune this tree? What's the right amount of sunlight? And if we apply this to mentoring and developing our people, well, we're trying to figure out what are the right combinations of things. And it starts with listening. How do we listen to the people that we are trying to coach? And this is where I mentioned seek first to understand, then to be understood. Conversations always start with questions. Let the person you're trying to coach drive the agenda. And when you're trying to figure out, well, okay, how much time do I have to do this? Typically, it's 15 minutes a month. You can go longer, but if it's 15 minutes a month, that is the right amount of fertilizer. That's the right amount of development. Now, if you have an hour a month, certainly that can be much better. But 15 minutes work. Now, there's a little bit more than that 15 minutes that I will get to. So don't get too excited about that yet. So I mentioned they want mentoring, but they're also looking for opportunity. And opportunity is a process. This was a chart that someone gave me in 1990 about the management process. And I find that it's just as relevant today as it was 30 years ago. And if I'm trying to teach someone a task, I have to do a few things. I have to set the expectation. This is what I want you to do. I have to train them on how to do that. And then I have to have them do it. And then I have to take a look at what they've done and give them some feedback. I have to assess what they've done. And then I have to reset the expectation. Either, okay, try do more, or fix these things and try it again. And the circle starts all over again. In the middle of this, people see growth. And from growth comes motivation. So when I start this process as the leader, I'm beginning with the end in mind. And the end that I want is I want this person to feel more comfortable on a particular task. And as we're growing people, what we're growing really is their capability to handle more tasks and their capability to handle more responsibility. That comes with practice. And something I found in myself over my career, I am great at setting the expectation. I am phenomenal at training. That's what I get to do in the business school. I fall apart on assessment and feedback. And I know this is common for other people. That's you give someone a task, you assign them it, you teach them how to do it, you give them the resources, and then, okay, I'm gonna go away because I got 1,000 other things to do. We have to remember to check back into that person. Not just because I want to make sure the task is done correctly, but because we want to show that person that we're holding them accountable for what they've done. We want to see the quality of their work, and we want to make sure that as we give them more responsibility, we've built a really solid foundation. And this process builds on itself. It starts small and it can get very, very large. So this is a model for how you develop people. But I want to just spend a second on the feedback part. So in the feedback loop, I might meet with someone right after they completed a task. But minimally, I'm going to meet with everyone that reports to me. And this could be in a small business of 5 people. It could be in a small business of 50 people where you have multiple managers. And I want to review the data. I want to know what worked well, what worked didn't well in this conversation. And if there was things that didn't work well, I want to understand why that didn't work well. How can we improve this? And I'm going to assume it wasn't because they made a mistake. My assumption is going to be, I didn't train you right. Something was wrong in our training process. Now, if I see mistakes happen consistently, then I'm going to move from a training opportunity to perhaps an opportunity something else. Something with them, it's not a strength, it's not something they enjoy doing. How can we get better results? But I'm going to have those conversations. And it's very important in those meetings to understand what are the future opportunities and assignments. The next generation of leaders and managers need to have it, I don't want to say spelled out, but they need to understand the vision of what their future looks like in a particular job, in a particular organization. And if you can just talk about what the near term looks like, what does it look like next month? What does it look like 6 months from now? You're going to indoctrinate that person into your culture. And I mean that in a positive way. You're going to build loyalty from that person into your culture because they see a future in what they're doing. Because this process doesn't just happen once, it happens every month. And the last question you're going to ask is how you can support them as the leader. What support do they need? Do they need more training? Do they need more practice? Do they need different tasks? And then you're going to set the next meeting. You always close the meeting by setting the next meeting. When you get good at this, it's this 15 minutes. It might be 30 minutes. But let's say you get good at this and it's 15 minutes. Then you're going to take 15 more minutes and you're going to write up your notes and you're going to make sure you share that with the person you're trying to coach. When they see that their leader spent time with them and then spent time to write up the notes and follow up, and now I'm seeing it on paper, I start to see what my development path is in this organization as the employee, as the one being coached. That again helps me understand how to do my job better, what my next jobs are, what I need to learn to do my next jobs, and it builds loyalty in me, going back to what we're worried about as organizations when we interview people. We're trying to build that culture of loyalty. And once we do that and we say, oh, I have another meeting in a month, I better get to work on this. That setting that next meeting date starts that cycle of accountability with that employee. And the coaching is actually pretty easy because you can take what you see on this slide, copy that into a Word document, and I just handwrite it. And it takes 10 or 15 minutes to summarize what we just discussed. And here's why this is so important. You might work in an organization that requires an annual evaluation. If I am doing this consistently, no evaluation will be a surprise. The evaluation actually writes itself. And the person I'm meeting with, they know exactly what their opportunities are. They know what their challenges are. They know what their strengths are. They know what they need to do to improve. They know what resources are available in the company for improvement. So there's no disconnect over, hey, I was promised this and I didn't get this, because I'm having those conversations all the time. The other thing that this does is that we all don't hire the right people every single time. Occasionally we make a mistake. If you're having these meetings in those first 90 days, you're going to know who are the mistakes and who aren't the mistakes. And when we're hiring, we want to fail fast. Failing fast helps us not spend a lot of time on training and development. Although it's painful because you think, oh, now I got to go back and hire people. It's better to just cut your losses at that point and find someone that better fits your organization. And it also gives you an opportunity to go back and determine what could we have done better in the interview process. It's your opportunity to go back into that management process and say, what do I need to learn more about this? How can I hire better people? How can I do a better job of training those people that come in? Sometimes it's not the right fit, but sometimes maybe it's us that might not have the right skill set. And that's what we have to go forward and try to figure out. What you're trying to do is create a culture of engagement. And cultures of engagement are really exciting places to go work. So if you have mentoring and regular one-on-ones, you've now created a culture of opportunity and mentorship. And from a dollar standpoint, if you are a small business, 20 people, and you lose 3 people per year, which is pretty reasonable, you're spending $20,000 you didn't need to spend. And for 6 hours a year, 15 minutes every month in a meeting, 15 minutes doing the write-up, 6 hours per employee. So 18 hours for those 3 people, you save $20,000. To me, that the math pencils out. It's worth it to create that culture, because then people want to come work for you. You'll get great referrals from the people that you're engaged with. You'll get referrals from customers. You'll get referrals from vendors. You'll never have to go look for talent because you're always developing the talent. And I'll leave you with one last thought. People don't quit bad jobs, they quit bad bosses, and they quit bad cultures. So we want your culture to be a great culture. And the way you do that is you develop your people. And there are a zillion ways to develop your people. I'm just giving you a couple things that I've seen from my experience. And I promised Kristine I would keep this to 30 minutes. So I will stop there and take questions.
All right, Jim, thank you so much. I think, chat has definitely been just popping off with some really good feedback, some really great comments. So what I'm going to do, I know this is a little bit atypical for our Chamber EDU webinars, but I want these to be a little bit more interactive. So I invite you for this Q&A portion to share your video, to share your audio, and ask your question on camera. If you're comfortable with that, you can always ask a question using chat if you do not feel comfortable enabling your audio and video. But please, we invite you to issue any comments and questions you have. I'll go ahead and just kick us off right now with one question that I had in particular with the interview process. So Jim, you mentioned that one of the goals of an interview obviously is to ascertain a potential employee's skill level, yes, and then also some of the, quote unquote, immeasurable qualities that someone an ideal candidate would possess. Um, let's use critical thinking as an example. I know that, that's one quality in any industry, in any format, in any job that is absolutely key. What are some of the questions that you use during an interview to gauge someone's immeasurable qualities, like their critical thinking, like their compassion, like their coachability? What are some things that we can be asking folks?
So from an interview standpoint, those are real challenges, because a lot of times people learn how to fake many types of those questions. And so some of the things that I've done, and I'll address critical thinking in just a second. I hired someone last year to do lots of responding to emails to our employers that want to hire students, to post all of our jobs. It's usually a pretty easy position for us to hire. And the person we hired interviewed well, was super personable, was really outgoing. We thought this is going to be the perfect hire. When he wasn't supervised, he could not write in complete sentences. He could not respond in a way that represented what we were trying to communicate to people. So now we changed our hiring process. We have a writing test that candidates will take before we ever interview them, and they'll have to submit that to us. And there's some things that you have to do to make sure that those tests are fair and don't discriminate. But you can certainly design assessments like that. When you're looking at critical thinking, and there's certainly people that are better qualified to answer this than me, you're really talking about scenarios where they have to reason through things. And I know that there are people that will ask questions: how many dimples on a golf ball? Or what's the distance from the Earth to the sun in miles? Because you want to see, how are people reasoning through that? I know of one company that has a big jar of jelly beans. How many jelly beans in this jar? To see, how will they reason through things like that? But for things that are sort of the intangible, I'll ask them scenario questions like that. Not a tell me about a time in your experience where you've done this, but more of a, hey, let me paint a picture for you. We'll ask people, how would you describe the color yellow to a blind person? Just because it's okay, that's not a normal thing that I have to do, but let me see if I can process something like that. So I don't want to say you want to ask questions that will throw them off balance, but you want to ask them questions that they really have to think about, and then you can judge what you think of the answer.
Absolutely. I think that's key, is developing scenarios. Again, you can really only get so much when you ask someone about, tell me about a time when ... But if you're presenting a real life scenario in the workplace that someone can reason through, that's going to give you a pretty good idea of how they're going to tackle solving problems or even attaining new skills. Because as we know, having a particular set of skills for a job is very important. But you almost want someone who is teachable and who, can teach themselves new skills as the job progresses. That is perhaps even more important.
And I would ask that question: tell me about a time that you had to teach yourself something new in order to complete an assignment in a class, if it's for a student or if it's for a professional in your job.
Absolutely. It's a great one. All right. Well, I don't want to hog all of the time. So if anyone else has a question they want to ask, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I definitely had a question. I was actually I've been reading the book Delivering Happiness by the owner that created Zappos, and it's a great book on culture. And I had the question I have is, how important is it to create a great I guess, HR team to bring those great employees on into the culture that you want for your organization?
Is it Stefan? Am I saying that right?
Mhm.
Stefan, it's a great question. Uh, I would say it's important, but I don't just dump that on HR's responsibility. I think it's everyone in the organization's responsibility to go out and be looking for the right fit. I don't like to rely. I don't want to just throw that on recruiters, because not every organization can have recruiters.
Mhm.
The first place I look for people to step is from the people in my office. Who do you know that would be a good fit, that would have those skills? So I want to make sure I'm arming my entire organization. There's a philosophy that everyone is in sales. Well, I would also say everyone's in recruiting, and I would say everyone's in coaching, because we should all be trying to develop each other.
Okay.
That's
Thank
a
you.
fantastic point. Absolutely. And that helps foster that culture that you're talking about, where, an employee can actually feel like they have a space to develop, not just to be developed, but that there's something aspirational about their role in the organization, that they can aspire to lead and guide others, and that they could teach their bosses a thing or two. I think that's a really healthy organizational culture that you can build.
That's something great to aspire to. And Stefan, as you keep going through that book, Tony Hsieh will talk about his management philosophy, where he basically eliminated all titles, all roles, all rules. And it's a pretty interesting philosophy of personal accountability and everyone taking ownership.
Thank you.
All right, Stefan, thank you for that question. What other questions do we have out there?
Good afternoon, Jim. Thank you for that presentation. Christy Eccles here, and I'm actually joining from Las Vegas, so nice to be with each of you. So I just wanted to share, for one, I'd love to connect with you and follow up. I love this topic on mentoring and protege. I actually work a little bit more in the construction industry and supporting those. And so there's even how some of this is so important and not talked a whole lot about, that is needed in that industry as well, not just in, maybe professional services. But I wanted to just get your thoughts on, we came across a couple years ago, Colby assessment. And that has just been a great tool and a great resource to provide, as well as really kind of learning a little bit about what their innate or mode of operation is, to help kind of guide us in, generations are so different, and how we all, we all have our different languages. But that has been a really great tool that we have used in helping us identify positions that we have available, and what would that look like, what type of I guess, personality, or what would be the person for that, and then being able to measure that, and realizing that sometimes we have the wrong people in the wrong places, and so sometimes you think you can mentor, you can train them, but sometimes it's just not a good fit. So I just wanted to share that as well as a great tool and resource that we have found. But I loved all of this. I was trying to take snapshot pictures. I was trying to, because I couldn't write quick enough on some of the things. So if you're presentation is also available, or Jim, if I could follow up with you as well later, I think this is some information I would love to share, or even have you share with our resource center, which is again geared a little bit more towards contractors, but some good information. So maybe we could connect later on that, Jim.
Sure. The presentation's available. Kristine can send it, I can send it. It's happy to deliver it again. And just a word on pre-employment assessments. I like it because it gives you a data point, but I also don't want to pigeonhole people. I train emergenetics, which is a personality assessment we've used it in leadership, Reno+Sparks. Lots of organizations use it. And you might assume that if I'm hiring an accounting person, they're going to have this certain personality. But what you learn is that you can't pigeonhole people, that there are plenty of outgoing, fun, and exciting, energetic accountants like Mike Hicks. in my case, is not really an accountant, so that's unfair to Mike.
But bankers can be pretty boring too.
So I mean, I would use them, but I would not use them as my sole guide to say, oh, this person really can't test into this. And where if I'm doing coaching and if I'm working in the trades, to me it's many ways easier because I have tangible things that I could look at that you're trying to meet a certain standard. It's almost like, coaching in manufacturing, where, your work has to be within certain tolerances. So to me, it's an even more direct application.
All right.
Thanks for your question, Christy.
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much for that. And we will coordinate a way to get the presentation out to everyone. Luckily, thanks to your registrations, we have all of your emails, so we'll be able to get in contact with you easily after the call. Any other questions out there? We probably have time for one more.
Hey, Jim, what do you think is the percentage of businesses, small, medium, that actually coach and mentor? And if they don't, why it would be the primary reason?
It's a great question, Tim. The primary reason is time. That a lot of the small businesses that I know and work with are just so busy because they've either, and especially during COVID, they've either cut back, and so everyone is doing multiple things, and they don't have time to think about it, and they're in survival mode. And it's kind of hard to go from survival mode to sustainable mode. And so I think those are some of the obstacles that go through that. And I'll talk a little bit about that when I do strategic planning, that we have to kind of stop and make a conscious effort to do this. And it can be really tough when we feel like, the house is on fire and now I got to sit down here and coach. Well, the alternative is suddenly you're standing by yourself and the house is on fire, and that's an even bigger problem. I don't have good data on what percentages of small businesses coach, but my guess is if you see really successful small businesses, and depending on whose definition we use, that could be under 500 employees, it could be under 100 employees. But I think of chamber members, and most of our chamber members have less than 25 employees. What percentage of those are using coaching? Probably the ones that are doing really well. And the ones that are doing well enough to be chamber members probably are doing some sort of coaching. Maybe not as consistently as they could, but that would be my guess.
If I could, this is Christy again, and that was a great question. And Jim, I wanted to point this out and see what your thoughts were. I'm a small business owner, but I do work with a lot of other business owners. And you're right, time is a lot of it, but the ones that are taking the time, those are the ones that are successful. I actually work with NDOT, and I am always looking to recruit mentors and proteges into our mentor protege program. Our challenge is the mentoring side, finding the leaders that could take the time and commit, even like you said, it's 15 minutes. That's not a whole lot. But that's actually a struggle that we're finding, is where are the successful leaders that are out there that are willing to be mentors to those, because I have a longer list of proteges than I do mentors available. So I don't know how to spin that, where we're encouraging more of our leaders that are in those positions, to step up, even if it is just 15 minutes a week or a month, whatever that might be. But that is actually one of our greatest challenges, is finding the mentors.
That's sort of my holy grail in the College of Business. So my life goal is when a student starts, they have a mentor that's assigned to them for their entire academic career, and hopefully for their professional life after that. But mentoring just doesn't work at scale. You have to start really small. So I tend to start with groups that have an industry focus, or with a small group of students working with a small number of professionals. It's really hard to say, okay, I'm going to take these 100 people and I'm going to try to pair them up with 100 mentors. It's because their mentoring programs by design or high touch. And so I would start with smaller bites, either by interest or by skill set, or just sheer numbers, and say, I would not do more than 10 or 15 at a time. At least that's been my experience, but there's probably people much better at it than me.
All right, thank you so much for again that question. And perhaps there's an initiative out there that all of us will be able to partner on one day to address those gaps in leadership, or even just awareness. Empowering people within businesses to think and to believe that they can actually be that coaching force within their own organizations. Perhaps people just need that invitation, that nudge, and they can figure it out intuitively. It looks like we've got a couple other questions coming in through chat, but we are over time. So my proposal is that we take these great questions coming in chat, or even if you have an email that you want to shoot to us after the fact, and we will try and address those perhaps on social media. So we will try and get those questions answered for you in an expedient fashion. So please follow the Chamber on social media to get those answers, and Jim and I will coordinate on getting those answers to you. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Again, please feel free to come to as many of these sessions as you like. Consider yourself invited and empowered. And I want to thank you again, Jim, for joining us today. And we've got a lot more of you to come. So we look forward to welcoming you back several more times throughout the course of the series.
I apologize for that.
All right. Thanks everyone so much. And we will see you again soon.
Great job, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks everyone.